I never thought my life would have such a bizarre new chapter. The message from my father arrived on an ordinary Thursday evening, but its content carried the weight of a verdict. Deanna, family meeting this Sunday, 2 p.m. Don't be late. Just one short sentence, no explanations, but I knew all too well that these so-called family meetings never meant anything good. The last time we had one, my mother tried to convince me to help my brother pay off his credit card debt. Before that, my father had asked me to take out a bank loan to help them renovate their house. Not once had these meetings been just a simple, warm gathering. I thought about ignoring it. I was 32, had a stable job, owned my own apartment in New York. There was no reason for me to answer their sudden summons. But a part of me, the foolish part that still hoped maybe this time would be different, pulled me there. On Sunday I drove back to my parents' home in suburban Connecticut. As soon as I stepped inside I could feel the tension hanging in the air, heavy like a storm cloud about to break. My father sat at the kitchen table, my mother stood beside him, their faces stern, as if I had committed some grave offense. On the couch sat Nate, my younger brother, the perpetual golden child still coddled at 29 years old. He didn't even look up when I walked in. "Sit down," my father ordered, without so much as a greeting. I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall. "If this is another financial request, I'm not interested," I said bluntly, already too familiar with these setups. My mother sighed, as if I were being difficult. My father, however, was far less patient. He pulled a paper from a folder on the table and slid it toward me. "Read this." I didn't touch it right away. My eyes skimmed over the numbers printed on the page, and for a moment, my heart stopped. Bolded at the top, Statement of Childhood Expenses. Below it was a long itemized list. Rent, food, private school tuition, medical bills, even things like utility costs and transportation expenses. All meticulously calculated, adding up to a staggering total. $102,500. I laughed, a reflex when faced with something so absurd. "This is a joke, right?" I asked. But no one laughed. My father sat up straight, his face void of any humor. "We raised you, fed you, gave you a home. Now that you're successful, have a career, have money, it's time for you to give back." My mother nodded, her voice softer but just as calculating. "We're not asking for much, this is just a small portion of what we spent on you. Honestly, the amount should be even higher." I placed the paper back on the table, feeling my blood begin to boil. "Let me get this straight," I said, keeping my voice as steady as possible. "You're demanding that I pay you back? For being born and raised?" My mother frowned, as if I were the most ungrateful child in the world. "It's not about paying us back, it's about showing gratitude. Family supports each other." I took a deep breath and turned to Nate, who still sat motionless, as if this had nothing to do with him. "Is Nate paying this too?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mother blinked, my father smirked. "Nate isn't in a position to contribute right now," my father said. "When he's financially stable, he'll contribute in his own way." I clenched my fists under the table. This wasn't just about money. This was about how they had always seen me as an investment to cash in on, while Nate was endlessly shielded. Slowly, I pushed the paper back toward my father. "No," I said firmly. His face darkened. "Diana, this isn't a request, this is your responsibility." I let out a cold laugh. Responsibility. Parents are responsible for raising their children. But children are not obligated to pay for being born. If you need money, just say so. Don't turn it into a debt. My mother shook her head in disappointment. "We knew you'd be selfish about this." A phrase too familiar. I had heard it all my childhood. I looked straight into my father's eyes, unblinking. There was not a hint of hesitation in my voice, as I repeated. "Duh." A long silence stretched between us. My mother gripped the edge of the table, her face contorted with frustration, but I no longer cared. I was used to the way they looked at me whenever I refused to do what they wanted. As if I were a traitor, an ungrateful child. My father leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Do you really think we don't deserve your help?" he said, his voice rough with barely contained anger. I let out a short, cold laugh. "Help? If I'm a debtor, then what is Nate? A lifelong VIP guest?" The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had hit the nerve. My mother's face paled, her eyes darting toward Nate as if trying to shield him from my words. But I didn't let them interrupt. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms over my chest, and began. "I never expected anything from you, and I learned that lesson early." I looked straight at my mother. "Remember when I asked for a new pair of shoes when I was 12? You told me if I wanted them I had to save up my birthday money. But just 2 months later, Nate got brand new shoes without having to wait for his birthday." My mother opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't stop. "Or when I wanted to go to that science camp, you both said the family budget was too tight. But the very next summer, Nate got enrolled in a basketball camp that cost twice as much." I turned to Nate. He merely shrugged, eyes still glued to his phone, as if none of this had anything to do with him. I didn't let it bother me, because I knew if I wanted something, I had to earn it myself. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay composed. But the injustice still burned in my memory, etched into me like scars that would never fade. Growing up, I did everything I could to never rely on anyone. My voice grew firmer. I started working part-time at 16, saved every penny to buy my first car. Meanwhile, when Nate turned 17, you just handed him the keys to one, no effort required. This time, even Nate couldn't pretend not to hear me. He glanced up from his phone, raising an eyebrow as if daring me to continue. "And then college," I scoffed. "I applied for scholarships, worked part-time, paid for every single cent of my tuition myself. But when Nate failed his first college entrance exam, you paid for him to retake it. And when he dropped out the second time, you still had his back, making sure he never had to take responsibility for a single one of his choices." I paused, locking eyes with my mother, whose face had grown stiff. "So tell me, Mom," I tilted my head, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Exactly how much support did I get from you?" My mother glared at me, lips pressed into a tight line as if she were about to explode. But it was my father who spoke first. "You can't just focus on the small things and ignore everything we've done for you," he ground out. "We gave you a home, a foundation, a good life." I shook my head. "No, you didn't give me anything. I took everything for myself." I stood up, slowly but deliberately. "If I was truly such a burden like you're claiming, then you should have been relieved when I left at 19 and never asked for help again. But no, now that I'm successful you come back demanding repayment like I'm some investment you expect returns on." My mother trembled as she rose to her feet, her eyes burning with rage. "You're so selfish," she screamed. "We're family, you should help us when we need." "Family?" I let out a sharp laugh. "There's no family here. I'm the bank, Nate is the VIP client, and you two are the profit managers." Nate slammed his phone down on the table with a loud thud. "You're being ridiculous," he snapped. "You're doing just fine, aren't you? So why bring up all this old crap now?" I stared at my brother for a long time. He had always been this way. A person who never saw the problem because he was never the one who suffered. "Nate, this isn't about money," I said slowly. "It's about the way Mom and Dad have treated us. And if you can't see that, then maybe you're just part of the system." Nate smirked and shrugged. He didn't care. And me? I was too exhausted to care anymore. I looked at my parents one last time. "If you truly believe I'm selfish, then consider my debt paid in full." I turned my back on them. But I knew this wasn't over. I stood there, my breath heavy as if I had just run a marathon, staring down at the paper my father had pushed toward me. The bold number at the bottom of the page nearly made me dizzy. $155,000. The entire room was silent. My chest tightened, as if someone had just punched me in the stomach. What the hell is this? I flipped through the pages, scanning the neatly itemized list. Living expenses, food, medical bills, even gas money from my school years. Are you serious? My father crossed his arms, his face completely expressionless. You don't need to act so shocked. This is the money we spent raising you, taking care of you, giving you a home. And now that you're successful, it's time for you to give back. My mother nodded, her eyes filled with a fake sense of sympathy. Dinah, you know we're not well off. We sacrificed so much to give you the life you have today. Isn't this the least you could do? I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Sacrificed? I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Do you remember who paid to get this family through its hard times? Because I do. It was me. I slammed my hand down on the table, my eyes scanning each face in the room. That time you called me saying the house was about to be foreclosed, that if no one helped we'd lose everything? I sent money immediately, without hesitation. I pointed at the paper in front of me. And now what? You're calling that a loan? Are you planning on charging me interest too? My mother blinked, avoiding my gaze. Deanna, you said you wanted to help. That's right. I helped because I thought this was my family. But what are you doing now? Turning me into a debt to be collected? I scoffed. And what about Nate? Does he have his own bill too? No one answered. I already knew the answer. I turned to Nate, who was still lounging in his chair, his face devoid of any concern. Nate, do you have anything to pay back? He shrugged. Mom and Dad didn't ask me to pay anything. Of course not. I nodded, my smile bitter. Because my whole life, I'm the one who's been paying for everything. I picked up the paper, holding it up in front of my father's face. You're telling me this is repayment for your investment in me? I ground my teeth. Then tell me, what about Nate? Does he get to live for free? My father sighed, his voice carrying a trace of impatience. Dana, you've always been strong. You've always been able to take care of yourself. Nate? He's not like you. I froze. Those words hit me like a slap across the face. So because I never asked for anything, because I took care of myself, I have to pay the price? Because I worked hard and stood on my own, you see me as a financial reserve? My father said nothing. I felt every cell in my body vibrating with anger. I looked at my mother, at my father, at Nate, one by one. This isn't a family, I said, my voice low but steady. This is a transaction. And I'm done playing this game. My mother opened her mouth to protest, but I had already grabbed the paper and ripped it in half. The torn pieces fluttered down onto the table, onto the floor, scattering like the fragments of something that had been rotting for a long, long time. If you truly believe I owe you something, then consider my debt paid, in full. I turned around and walked straight to the door. But just as my hand touched the doorknob, my father's voice rang out behind me. If you walk out that door, you are no longer our daughter. I stopped. The air in the room froze. I could hear my mother's sharp inhale, feel my father's cold stare. Sense Nate's indifference. I turned back and looked at my father for a long moment. I think that happened a long time ago. Then, I opened the door and stepped outside, leaving behind everything I had once desperately held on to. I stood there, my hand still resting on the doorknob, my breath heavy. My father's final threat echoed in my mind. If you walk out that door, you are no longer our daughter. For a split second, I felt something familiar. An invisible weight pressing down on me. The same weight I had carried all my life. Obligation. Guilt. The fear of being abandoned. They had used it to control me since I was a child. But this time, I wouldn't let them. I slowly turned around and pulled my phone from my coat pocket. If you want to talk about debts, let's make it fair. My mother frowned. My father crossed his arms, his expression darkening. I opened a file on my screen and tilted my phone toward them. $115,000. I read the first number aloud. The money I transferred into your account when you called me, saying the family was in trouble. My mother pressed her lips together. Diana, we needed that money to keep the house. Did you really want your parents to lose everything? I ignored her and continued. My savings, the money I spent years putting aside. I asked about it once and you both claimed you didn't know, but now, I do. It was transferred into Nate's account. What did you call it? Helping your brother get on his feet? Nate, who had been sitting idly until now, suddenly straightened up. Are you seriously bringing that up? He shrugged. Mom and Dad just wanted to help me. It's not like you're struggling. I let out a cold laugh. Oh, fantastic. So, I'm responsible for taking care of you, but you have no obligations toward me? Nate turned away, saying nothing. I looked directly at my parents, my fingers scrolling to the final figure. Grandpa's inheritance. My voice was steady. My entire life I had no idea he left me anything. But I found the documents. He left a significant amount for both Nate and me. The only difference? I never saw a single cent. My mother sucked in a sharp breath. My father clenched his jaw. That money wasn't just for you, my father snapped. We used it for the family, to make sure everyone had a better life. Everyone? I arched an eyebrow. Or just Nate? Silence. No one spoke. I glanced at my phone one last time before stating my final point. The total amount you've taken from me far exceeds what you're now demanding I pay back. If we're treating this like a transaction, then technically you still owe me. My mother's face turned pale. My father exhaled sharply through his nose, his jaw tight. Deanna, there's no need to take it this far. His voice softened in a way that set off alarms in my head. We can negotiate. If you think the amount is too high, we can lower it. I laughed. Negotiate? I shook my head. I don't negotiate with people who've stolen from me. My father shot up from his chair, planting both hands on the table. Who do you think you are, talking to us like this? I looked at him, and for the first time, he felt like a stranger. This was the man who raised me, but he had never truly loved me. To him, I had only ever been an investment, something to drain dry for profit. I'm someone who's finally grown enough to stop being manipulated by you. I slipped my phone into my pocket and turned my back on them. I heard my mother sobbing, but not a single tear from her could sway me. As my hand touched the doorknob, my father's voice rang out once more. If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back. I paused, but this time not out of fear. I turned my head and looked at my father for a long moment, before calmly replying, You know what, I think that happened a long time ago. Then I stepped out, letting the door close behind me. I drove home with a blank mind. The anger still pulsed hot in my veins, but beneath it was a cold, calculating clarity. They had taken so much from me. Not just money, but trust, respect, and years of effort I had spent trying to earn my place in this family. But now, I wouldn't let them walk away from this so easily. I walked into my apartment, tossed my bag onto the couch, and immediately opened my laptop. There was one thing they couldn't argue with: documents and financial records. My fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard as I pulled up the files I had saved: bank statements, transaction history, emails, messages. Everything was here. Clear proof of how they had exploited me. $115,000. Transferred from my account to theirs 7 years ago. The transaction description read, Financial support for family. $32,000, withdrawn from my savings account not long after. I remembered it clearly. My mother had called me, her voice sweet as honey, saying that Nate needed a fresh start, and they were just borrowing the money. My grandfather's inheritance. I hadn't found direct proof yet. But I knew exactly who to ask. I picked up my phone and called Uncle Ray. Uncle Ray was my mother's older brother, blunt, honest, and probably the only person in the family I still trusted. I had never asked about the inheritance before because I hadn't even known it existed. But now, I had a reason to dig deeper. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. Diana, it's been a while, sweetheart, what's up? I took a deep breath. Uncle Ray, I need to ask you something. It's about my inheritance from Grandpa. Silence. A few seconds passed before he let out a long sigh. So, you're finally asking. His voice carried a hint of bitterness. My heart clenched. So, it's real? My voice came out hoarse. Yes, Uncle Ray said firmly. Your grandfather left equal amounts to both you and Nate. Not a fortune, but enough to give you both a good start. I was the trustee at the time, but your mother told me you had agreed to let them manage your share for you. I thought you knew. I let out a dry laugh. I never agreed to that. Damn it, he cursed under his breath. Then they lied to you. They withdrew everything from the trust, and if they've already spent it, getting it back won't be easy. I tightened my grip on the phone. I don't care what they did with it, I'm not letting this go. Uncle Ray sighed again. I understand. And I'll help you however I can. I hung up, my hands trembling with rage. They had stolen from me. They had taken my money. Brazenly, shamelessly, as if it were their right. Now, I wasn't letting this end with just an argument. I scrolled through my contacts and dialed another number, my lawyer Ethan Carter. A specialist in family asset disputes, and more importantly, a trusted friend. Deanna, it's been a while, what's going on? I took a steady breath. Ethan, I want to sue my parents. There was a brief silence, but I could hear the sound of his keyboard clicking on the other end. What is this case about? Embezzlement. I have proof that they took my inheritance without my consent. I also have records of money transfers that were never repaid. If there's enough evidence, we can file a lawsuit for fraud and misappropriation of assets. I closed my eyes. Fraud. The word felt heavy when applied to my own parents, but if this wasn't fraud, then I didn't know what else to call it. I want to move forward immediately. Understood. I'll draft the lawsuit and send it to you for review. If everything checks out, we'll file it with the court. I nodded, even though Ethan couldn't see me. Do it. I'll send over all the documents I have. When the call ended, I sat still in my chair, staring at my laptop screen. All the years I had been exploited, all the sacrifices I had made for my family. Now, I would take everything back, in a way they couldn't escape. This wasn't a family dispute anymore, this was justice. And I would make sure. They faced the consequences of what they had done. 3 weeks after I filed the lawsuit, things truly started to unravel. I was sitting in my office when I got a call from Ethan. They've received the summons, he said, his voice calm, but I could sense the tension beneath his words. And their reaction isn't great. Ew. I didn't need him to explain. I had already expected this. And right on cue, my mother showed up at my doorstep that evening. She pounded on the door relentlessly, her fists slamming against the wood, echoing down the apartment hallway. Diana, open this door right now, what the hell do you think you're doing? I stood up, took a deep breath, and opened the door. My mother nearly stumbled inside, her face twisted with fury. Are you insane? How could you do this to your own parents? I crossed my arms, keeping my voice steady. I'm just taking back what's mine. Her mouth fell open as if I had just said something utterly unthinkable. You're suing your own parents. Do you know what people will say? I shrugged. I don't care. Her eyes burned red, her voice trembling. We are family, Deanna. You really willing to destroy everything over some money? I clenched my fists. Family doesn't do this to each other. You're not the victims here. You took from me first. I'm only reclaiming what's rightfully mine. She broke into tears, but I felt nothing but exhaustion. She mumbled bitter accusations under her breath before storming out, the sound of her heels echoing down the hallway. But it didn't stop there. 2 days later, my father called. Deanna. His voice was low, missing its usual authority. You're taking this too far. I didn't respond. If you drop this now, we can handle it as a family. There's no need to blow this out of proportion. I let out a dry chuckle. So now you want to negotiate. His patience snapped, instantly. If you don't withdraw the lawsuit, then don't expect to have a place in this family anymore. That threat should have scared me. but all I felt was relief. Dad, I haven't been a part of this family for a long time. I hung up before he could say anything else. But the next person to contact me was the one who surprised me the most. Nate texted. "What the hell is wrong with you? Are you really driving this family crazy over money? Are you seriously dragging everyone down over some stupid amount? Don't you see how ridiculous you're being?" I stared at the screen, feeling an almost absurd urge to either laugh or cry. He had never faced the consequences of anything, and now that things were finally shifting, he was calling me unreasonable? I typed back 3 words. "Figure it out." Then I blocked his number. In the end, my parents had no choice but to pay me back. They sold the house, the same house they once proudly called the family home. The vacation condo they had flaunted to relatives? Gone too, liquidated to settle their debt. I didn't feel a shred of pity. This wasn't punishment. This was them finally facing the consequences of their own actions. Nate lost his mind when he found out. "You ruined everything for me," he screamed in a long-winded text I didn't bother reading. No, I hadn't ruined anything for him. He lost everything because our parents no longer had money to support him. Because they had spent my money giving him an easy life. And now that I had taken it back, everything came crashing down. For the first time in his life he had to take responsibility. My parents spread rumors throughout the family that I had sued them over a misunderstanding, that I was an ungrateful child, that I had destroyed them out of greed. I didn't care. I was free of them. No more desperate calls asking for money, no more emotional manipulation, no more guilt or obligation weighing on me every single day. For the first time in years, I felt light. I had reclaimed what was mine. And I had no regrets. I sat on the balcony of my apartment, swirling a glass of wine in my hand. The New York night buzzed with life, city lights reflecting off the towering glass buildings. Below, traffic flowed endlessly, people hurried from place to place. Yet for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. No more persistent calls from my mother. No more guilt-tripping texts from Nate. No more threats from my father. I had broken free from the cycle they had tried to trap me in my entire life. And yet, for a fleeting moment, I wondered, was I being too harsh? I knew that, to them, I was the traitor, the selfish daughter who had mercilessly torn the family apart. They were probably telling anyone who would listen that I had sued my own parents over a small misunderstanding and had driven them to ruin over money. But I knew the truth. They had exploited me long before I was old enough to understand how unfair it was. They had drained me for every cent they could get, and when I finally demanded what was mine, they painted me as the villain. If anyone was wondering whether I regretted it, the answer was no. I had no regrets standing up for myself. I had no regrets exposing their manipulation. And I certainly had no regrets cutting them off for good. I thought about Nate. Not long after the lawsuit ended, I heard he had to move out of the apartment our parents had been paying for. With no one left to bail him out, no one left to take responsibility for him, he was finally on his own. Did I feel satisfied about that? Not exactly. I never wanted revenge, I just wanted justice. But one thing was certain, I felt no pity. Because for my entire life I had to rely on myself, while he never faced any consequences for his laziness. Now he had to do what I had been doing since I was 16, stand on his own 2 feet. I thought about my mother. Once, I overheard from a distant relative that she had been telling everyone how I had ruined the family, that I had forced them to sell the house, that I was ungrateful, that I valued money over family. I didn't argue. I let them say whatever they wanted, because I didn't care anymore. I thought about my father. He never reached out again. Maybe he still held a grudge, furious that I had dared to go against him, that I no longer followed the rules he had set. But I was no longer the frightened child he could manipulate. I was free. I looked down at my phone. No more demanding texts, no more pleading calls. I let out a small chuckle. Freedom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's simply the absence of things that were never worth worrying about in the first place. I took a sip of wine, letting the dry bitterness slide down my throat, then gazed out at the sparkling city in front of me. Had I done the right thing? I had protected myself, but in return, I had lost my family. Somewhere deep inside, I understood that family ties weren't meant to end like this. But true family isn't a financial burden. Family isn't a business transaction where parents raise their children just to demand a return on investment later. I had done the right thing. But I also understood that in their eyes, I would always be the villain. So did I care? No. I set my glass down and scrolled through my phone notifications. Nothing from them, nothing from family anymore. A wave of relief spread through me. So this is what freedom feels like. And I have no regrets. But what about you? Do you think I went too far, or have you been through something similar? If you've ever been exploited by your family, manipulated by the very people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, what would you do? Would you stay silent, or would you stand up for yourself? Diana's story is not just a legal battle, it's a journey of reclaiming self-worth. It reflects the harsh reality that not every family is a safe haven. And sometimes, the ones closest to us can be the most manipulative. Cutting ties isn't selfish, it's a way to protect yourself from exploitation and injustice. Diana chose to stand up for herself, to take back what was rightfully hers, despite the judgment of others. Her story is a powerful reminder. Family is not a financial obligation. It is built on respect and genuine love. What do you think about Diana's story? Was she wrong to fight for justice, or was she simply claiming what she deserved? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more gripping and thought-provoking family stories.